My income in retirement was solely based on running a roadrunner business. But of course, you know that this all failed and I lost a lot of money just on the roadrunner business itself. I lost more than 40,000 US dollars. But you know what? There's more to it. There's a few things that I did not really go into and I wasn't ready to go into. So this video is about why really the whole project failed and how I lost a lot of money. So let's go through a few things here. Now, a lot of people were saying that, you know what, it's poor planning, it's poor planning. You know, these are just vague words, okay? There's a lot of planning that was done, but of course, there's also a lot of mistakes that were done. So what I'm covering in this video are those mistakes, just in case you may want to go into a similar business. This video could actually save you. Okay, so when it came to why I ended up choosing the roadrunner business was because these type of chickens are not susceptible to a lot of diseases. So I thought this was a fantastic plan. So when I did all my costings, it turns out that this had 5,295 profits, and this was based on commercial feed, and these were 1,000 chickens. Okay, so of course, if you sell one bird at $10, that's the price of roadrunners, and then minus the cost of feed and the cost of medication, it'll be 10,000 minus 6,500 or somewhere along those lines. And this was my budget. Now, in this as well, I was thinking I could also do eggs, and these will be free range eggs. And again, this was based on a budget of 300 roadrunner chickens, and this will give me a profit of 915. So these are gross profits. Okay, I haven't added the salaries of the workers and so on and so forth. Okay, now over here, this was a budget with our own feed. So as you can see, our gross profit here is way much better. It's now 7,000 as compared to 6,500. Okay, the same applies over here as well. So as you can see, there was a lot of work that was done to take a look and see if this business was viable and to see if this business was actually profitable. And as you can see, definitely it's profitable. But you know what? I'm looking at one aspect of the business, and that's where mistake number one is. If you look at how much it costs on paper, when you are in operation, it's different, because there's so many factors that come into this, which I did not take into account. So I'm now in fact, I prepared a basic slide here, which we can go through so I can show you what I missed out and what I could have done. So first of all, can you imagine? I'm thinking of having 1,000 roadrunner chickens. So the question now is, when they get to the 16 weeks, how was I going to store them? Did I have a refrigeration system? Because remember, as soon as they hit week 16, they have to be slaughtered, because after that, whatever feed they're eating, it's eating through your profits. So I hadn't put into account that that was supposed to be something that needed to be taken care of. So looking back, the first thing I was supposed to have done was to invest in a solar system and then move on to refrigeration. Why the solar system? Because of course we're dealing with 1,000 chickens here. I cannot rely on the normal zest in Zimbabwe. Although I live in an area where the electricity doesn't go that often, I can't really rely on that, because sometimes I realized that there were situations where there were issues with electricity. Perhaps maybe there was someone stole the transformer, or there was a mechanical problem, and sometimes this would take days. So you can imagine, if I was relying on the normal electricity, that would really be a problem for me. So looking back, this was supposed to be the first thing that I was supposed to have done, and that is getting a solid solar system. Now you may be thinking, well, does any solar system work? Yes and no. Through my research, I found out that a transformer-based inverter is best for this kind of work, because we're talking about a commercial freezer here. We're not talking about one of your normal, fridges or fridge freezer that we have in the house. We're talking about a commercial one here, and it draws a lot of power, to be honest. Because why I'm saying this, I calculated how much I used to spend for my electricity every month, and then calculated how much it cost me when I installed this new freezer in the house. And definitely the electricity went up by close to 30%. So definitely you need a very strong inverter. Now, those other inverters, yes, they are okay. I'm forgetting the names now, but those not transformer based, which means that yes, they can handle the power, but you're overworking the components, and later on you are cutting off the lifespan of that inverter. So you need something that is way more solid. So that was the first thing that I did not implement in this whole system before even starting the whole Roadrunner business. Secondly, the refrigeration, of course, was not taken into account, and this was a very big problem. Now, moving forward, what also was lacking was a system, because for a business to work, you need to have a system in place. Now, I feel so silly saying this because in my marketing business right now, I have a system. I have a lead generation system. I have a nurturing system, my email automation. Everything has a system in my current business. Now, I don't know how I sleepwalked into this business without actually having a system. And this is where I say sometimes our emotions take charge and we end up making dumb decisions. And this is a very, very clear example. And can you imagine coming from someone who's experienced in marketing and I'm making these mistakes? So the systems were definitely missing. Here with the workers, definitely you need to have workers that are experienced. You need to document everything before you even start producing the chickens. And then after that, you need to also take care of the marketing and the sales. And this also has to be a proper system that is working. Because if you just do it randomly, this is definitely not going to work. You cannot just have a business like this running randomly without a clear-cut dates of this is when we're going to slaughter, this is how it's going to be refrigerated. The customer A, customer B has to order this way. They have to be delivered that way. So all this has to be a proper process. It's very, very important. Okay, so moving on, like I mentioned, the workers, they need to be on a routine. They cannot just be working however they want, especially when you have large batches. They can't just, come to work whatever time they want. There has to be a proper timetable, a proper routine. 8 o'clock, washing or cleaning up the chicken run, or you need to be making sure the water is going into the chicken runs. And all this has to be signed and ticked off when they're changing shifts. Now, it looks like it's something so simple, so basic, but you know what? Having worked in the UK, I thought they were very overboard when it came to how we worked in the factories, because we had a clock-in time, you had a clock-out time, and when you left your shift, you had to make sure that you have your mini report saying, this is what it is, this is what I left, this is the stock, this is what's being done, this is what needs to be done, so that tomorrow when something happens, at least you know exactly where to go, and at least that'll be the first place that you can go and start finding out where things were. Okay. Moving on, documentation. Yes, I did in a way have some documentation there, but the documentation really was very weak because it was just mainly focused on counting the chickens. So when chickens died, that was not documented. So if you're going to be running a business like this, you need to have everything documented. If a chicken dies, okay, it died. What are the symptoms? Okay. Sometimes if you need to take it to the vet for post-mortem, you take it to FIVET, for example, they will do the post-mortem and tell you why it died, what the reason is, and all of that. Documented so that next time it happens, you know how to prevent that from happening again. It's because you'll see a trend. And also, if you're going to be keeping quite a number of batches, it's very easy to see, okay, you know what? We lost a batch around this time. Maybe it was week 3. We lost a few chickens. This trend is repeating. We need to fix this. We need to fix that. The only way you can see those patterns is if you have documentation. So documentation here is very, very important. Okay, now let's talk about the market itself. You need to have a system in place whereby you know that people are contacting you via WhatsApp for business, or they're actually contacting you on the website. The website should be able to take orders, it should be able to take payments, and it should also be able to give customers an idea of how their order is being processed. When is the delivery time? Has everything been delivered yet? You need to have a portal for your clients to see all of that. Now, this may not be necessary if you are selling all your chickens on the ground in Zimbabwe, but if you're going to be selling them online, definitely you need an e-commerce website which can handle all this in a nice, clear way. This will make it easier for you to manage things, and if there's any issues, you can always go back to the customer and see exactly where the problem is and resolve that issue. So this here is very, very, very important. So you may be thinking, this guy, he's crazy. After losing all that money, why go back into this business? Yes, I know it sounds crazy, and it's a lot of money that I've lost. We're talking about like I said, this is enough to buy a stand for those of you that like investing in property and stands and so on. Yes, but when I sat down and I went through everything and I reflected upon everything, I realized that the failure of this task was due to my lack of planning and lack of system implementation. So I was very emotional when I went into this, and I did not even think about all these things that I'm mentioning in this video. I mean, who would think that a solar system would be important if you're running Roadrunner chickens? The other thing as well that I also did not take into account is if you have 1,000 chickens, you also need another batch that's following it, and we have 16 weeks. So the initial capital needed for this project was going to be a lot. Secondly, the land that I have was only 4 hectares, and I was keeping these chickens in a very confined place. So this was not even viable at all. So having sat down and put all these things into account, I realized that the Roadrunner business was not actually a very good idea because I lacked the space. I needed to have the grass for the chickens to feed on so that I cut down my costs on the chickens themselves, because feeding Roadrunners with commercial feed is a very, very costly and crazy idea. I mean, the idea was to have pastures for these chickens, and definitely there were no pastures. So what I decided to do was to pivot. So my focus was on broilers, and I did a few batches of broilers, and definitely things worked because at this time I had invested in a solar system, a very solid one. I also invested in a commercial freezer. So that meant that as soon as I get to 6 weeks, the broilers are getting slaughtered and I start selling. So I did this for about 6 months. I did not announce this. And maybe this is your first time hearing about this. That is because I wanted to do a trial run to see if this was really something that I could do and do effectively. And sure enough, it is brilliant. It's fantastic. It worked. There was a lot of trial and errors. There are situations where I had so many batches and the feed was not enough, and then the chickens were struggling. I mean, it was a painful moment to actually see that happening. But I've ticked all the boxes of what's needed and how to really approach this on a slightly larger scale. And that is what I'm working on right now. So that is my story, and this is why I'm not giving up. I've realized where I messed up, and I'm really putting even more money into this business now because it is viable. There is a market for it, and I'm pretty sure when you guys start tasting my chickens, you're going to love them because they are organic and they taste really nice. We don't boost them with steroids or growth hormones or feed them with pig feed. None of that. Everything is okay. In fact, I will do a separate video regarding that. Now, for those of you that are thinking of retiring back in Zimbabwe or wherever you are in Africa, you do need to make sure that you have a system in place of how you're going to be earning your money in retirement. I hear a lot of people talk about Airbnb. Well, I want to give you a few things to think about because Airbnb, it's easier said than done. I mean, of course, we can all say Airbnb, but the question now is, do you have a platform where you can have your bookings in a nice, easy way? Do you also have a marketing strategy? Do you have a marketing plan? How do you intend on getting people to know about your Airbnb? And wherever it is it somewhere where there's enough tourism around it, or it's just in the middle of a rural place. Now, I'm talking about rural B&B here, or is it in the middle of, say, Mutoko right there, and there's no other attractions around? Ask yourself these questions. Why would anyone want to go there if there's no tourist attractions around that place, or some sort of experience of the people in the local area? If you don't have that, I don't see why anyone would want to go and live in an Airbnb, in a rural Airbnb in that way. I'm not saying this to discourage anyone, but I'm saying this so that you think of these things before you invest a lot of money building these Airbnbs, because I know for sure that you need to have a booking system and you need to have a solid way of making sure that everything is working seamless. So definitely having a website is going to be important, unless you're going to use Airbnb, the site, and so on. So do look at all these expenses, do look at all these things that I'm talking about before you make a decision, because I made an emotional decision, and I'm just trying to at least advise you not to do an emotional decision and then end up losing a lot of money. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you go to ruwaorganic.com and join the community over there. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.